Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts. Today's guest is Cheche Mutiri, the country's Solicitor General, and we're discussing the Anglo Leasing payouts. And before we get back into, the case against Kenya and why and how the settlement was arrived, I'll give you a text message which pretty much sums up the feelings of our viewers. I just lost it for a minute, but it said something about, right, here we are. Good morning, Cheche. Can the Solicitor General tell Kenyans why the government is so enthusiastic to pay the so-called Anglo Leasing bills when the same government has refused to pay compensation to Kenyan petitioners after being awarded by Kenyan courts, some going back many years? That came from Wambua in Nairobi. And so you've made a case for Kenya having to pay this, the damage to our reputation, our credit risk failing, and yet you seem to be ignoring Kenyans within the country. So how do you justify Kenya meeting its international obligations but failing in its national obligations?
I don't think that is completely true.
Right.
And I think one of the things we have done as a government is seek to ensure that we pay out as much as possible all the judgments that are entered against the government. Now, these particular payments, I think, were raised when I was seeking the job of Solicitor General. It was raised by the parliamentarians in my interview. It's been raised severally. I have been actively working to ensure that these payments are made, especially the so-called Nyayo torture chamber victims. And it's important to know that it was a dark time in our history, and we would like to put it behind us. And the judgment that has been entered, we have settled quite a few. Actually, I wish I had known, we've settled quite a few. But again, as in this case, the question of payment and settlement are twofold. One, it comes to us and we go to court and argue on behalf of the government. Once judgment has been entered, we go to the line ministry. We tell the line ministry, now we feel that we have exhausted all avenues and now it's time to pay. It is now their job to put in their budget, where once it is approved in their budget, they submit the money to us and we pay the litigants. Unfortunately, because of the constraints of the budget, they have scheduled some of those payments, and we're trying to fast track them. But the other more pressing pressures on the budget. Now let's come to this the Anglo Leasing payment.
How? Because there's a fear that even the settlement itself might be shrouded in corruption. That it's a payment to appease the various figures who are involved in the original deal.
I can't say much about that, but as a Solicitor General, when I looked at the mitigation in the mediation, it has reduced the price so drastically, right, that it negates the risk that mediation could have been fought with corruption. Because one of the hallmarks of the corruption will be that it is done in a way that the amount to be paid out is not justifiable. This one is within the realm of justifiable. So I think that will mitigate that risk that it's happened.
You mentioned some names.
Pereira. Yes.
And some other.
Former finance minister?
No. Those from outside government.
Yes.
Those brokers or whatever they call them.
Yes.
How come they have never been to a court or anywhere? They have never been questioned.
No, I think from what I've understood from discussion with the EACC, Pereira is outside the jurisdiction of the court.
All right.
And he's actually a Sri Lankan national and holds an Irish passport as well, or something to that effect. So we've not had a chance, and there have been requests to interview him with regard to these contracts. But to date, nothing has happened.
But we have Interpol.
We have Interpol, and we have written requests to them for mutual legal assistance. What they did provide us, and we're very grateful to them, is they did provide us the evidence of the payment of the school fees of the children of Cheongo. But to go after him, you see, we don't have. If we had enough evidence to deal with him or directly link him with the corruption, then it'll be. I think it'll be quite an easy case to deal with. But one thing you should know is that you mentioned earlier the Anglo Leasing scandal. I mean, the Goldenberg scandal. And one of the architects, supposed architects of it, is still walking free today. So again, it goes back to that same point that you need to show the nexus between the person, the corruption, and the reward. And this is a very difficult thing to do. And I think we must acknowledge what has happened, but find a way to move forward. Because if we keep talking about Anglo Leasing 10 years from today, it will not help us much. What we're doing is...
How can you ask Kenyans to go move forward when, to refer back to Goldenberg, as you say, one of the main people behind it is walking free, and then we have a similar scandal, and still the Kenyan government is unable to use your words again, prove the nexus linking both of them. Should something not have happened within Kenyan law enforcement investigative capacity to root out, uncover, and prove corruption? We haven't, grown much between Goldenberg and Anglo Leasing, have we?
No.
And there's a third one, Triton.
Right.
Yeah. What do you say?
But
yeah.
You see, again, on the Triton is under investigation, and I don't think it's wise for me to comment.
Investigation.
Ongoing investigation.
How many years?
These things are 10 years old. But
some investigations take many years.
We will excuse Muturinje for being, newly in office. So he cannot represent perhaps the face of the older, his predecessors. But on the matter of this Anglo Leasing, the Kenyan courts have held, Justice Omukule, who ruled in Nakuru, that the identities of this company, the company that is supposed to be paid, cannot hold in law as a legal personality. And that they cannot even, in his award, could not even award costs for the suit that they had brought to court. And therefore,
they're non-existent.
Non-existent. That is in our judiciary. We're still struggling, and Parliament is still grappling, and part of the rebellion against this payment is the lack of disclosure of the identities of the people we are paying. Will you be willing to reveal them?
The people we're paying?
Yes. Who are Anglo, the people we are paying? Mercantile was a financial, what is it called?
Financial.
A financial,
the one who got
so to
loan
speak.
from.
Yeah, we're paying First Mercantile.
Yeah.
And the beneficial owner of First Mercantile, as I said before, is Pereira.
Is Pereira?
Yes.
But what is this conflict about? Who are the faces that, that the...
You see, that is part of what we alleged in court was what we thought was corruption.
Yes.
Is because it's not opaque. It's very opaque, sorry.
Yes.
So it is like 4 different companies with different directors and the names. We have the names.
Yeah.
I wish I had known that, but we have the names of each one of those directors. But we were not looking at the names because we find the names are very innocuous. The names of people, but we're looking for a nexus. Who's a mastermind?
When you talk about the nexus, though, some of the names that have come up, there seems to be a relationship, a blood relationship, between some of the various directors of the companies that were involved in the Anglo Leasing deals.
Yes, there was.
Right?
Yes, there was.
So why does that not...
it's like 6 individuals who are running 18 companies who are all trying to provide these services to government through these financing agreements.
That is what we are trying to establish.
Are we saying all the 6?
That's not established.
If we can't get Pereira, can't we get the others?
Sorry?
You say Pereira is from where, so you can't get it?
We had the Park, we had Juma, we had Pereira. These names have been floating
Why
in
can't
the
we get the
reports
others?
of
If
the
you can't get
investigations.
Why can't we get the others?
You see, again, this is a matter of investigation which is ongoing. And with regard these two cases, the one person, and we have said this in court, and it's not been contradicted, that the beneficial owner of First Mercantile was Pereira. I think it's something that they have even acknowledged. This is very clear. Now, as regards the other cases which are not in court and which the other people refer to, yes, they were all contained in the Anglo Leasing report. Those people have been identified as behind those companies, those 18 companies, actually, as you're right. One of the things we established in the PSC report is that the 6 individuals seem to be the beneficial owners of the 18 companies.
Yes.
And they're somehow interrelated.
Yes.
Not all 18, but you find 6 are interrelated to one, another 3 into another 4 with one. So in this case of ours, there was a Universal Search Space, which was the London case. There was First Mercantile. There was SpaceNet, which was involved in the transaction, and Gillette. And then another company called Aldin. So the 5 companies we were alleging, these 5 companies were under the control of one person.
Yes.
And that was the whole thrust of our argument. Now, each one of these companies has directors. 3 of them are registered in British Virgin Islands. One is in the States and one is in Switzerland.
Right.
Now, sorry, one is in Israel. We have all along, our supposition and our proposition, what we have argued before the court was that these companies are all connected, and that is why we're alleging corruption.
Yes.
One of the reasons. But since we did not, you see, being suspicious
It's not adequate.
Yeah, it's not adequate.
Yeah.
You understand?
You have to provide the
So
evidence.
the judge would smile and say, yeah, very suspicious and very unfair contracts, but that does not prove corruption.
But you said in your own, part of the contention that the government has is that these things were overpriced.
Yes.
In fact, that is the biggest.
Yes.
That shows there must have been some underhand deals. Now, why is it difficult for the government to prove that, in fact, failure to follow due process, because by the time these contracts are entered, the technical officers in the ministries should have gone to do international pricing, comparative pricing, and arrived at the right pricing which the government should have paid for. Is that so difficult to prove abuse of office, for example, on the part of the allegations of corruption on the Kenyan side? Why is that not possible to do?
I wish Makali was with us in London. He's spoken very well. I think we didn't argue the case better than myself. That is what we did allege. That's exactly what we alleged. Exactly what you just said. That there were direct procurement, the way they were procured, the due diligence on those companies, whether it was conducted before the contract was entered, all the things you're saying, all those things are in our pleadings. Exactly. In fact,
but the problem.
Have you read our pleadings, and are you reciting our? Because that's exactly what we alleged, and that's what exactly we could not prove, because those people were not charged. It's one of the failings of the whole thing. They were never charged for those.
Mm-hmm.
But
so can you address that now? Can you go back and charge those?
Yes,
and it's my question. If you said you can't get Pereira, and you other 6, whatever number they are, why have they not been caught and charged?
Oh, the other 6 in Anglo Leasing?
Yes.
From my understanding, none of them in Kenya.
Okay.
Have
you gone back to Interpol then to ask them?
Yes.
So coming back to the point that David makes, have you charged the people who should have been? The Githongo dossier mentions those who he believes are culpable.
Correct.
Have you charged them? Have they been investigated? Their names that most people know about. Have they been investigated? Have they been charged?
To my understanding, they have been investigated.
And
investigations are ongoing.
Ongoing.
No, to my understanding, from the last discussions we've had.
Since 2000, because this thing is
2006.
It's more than
2006.
10 years old, yeah.
Yeah, they're more than, you're right. 2006.
So why is
Yep,
why the wheels of justice turning so slowly in this case?
Again, I think what I said earlier is a capacity.
On your part?
Yes.
The Office of the Attorney General?
No, the capacity of the country, which we have since we now have forensic investigation now, which should form a central part of investigation into corruption, is an audit trail to determine the money, how it moved, the documents, how they moved, and find that nexus. We now do have, right now, we are capable of investigating corruption, but it should be something that should be ongoing. Now, the problem we have is these old cases, I'm not giving any justification for why we have not done it, but I said these old cases are still being investigated.
I think they're pretty straight.
Let me put one of those Anglo Leasing cases. It was for building a forensic laboratory for the CID. There was no land. First of all, no land had been given. By the time the money was being paid, no money, no land had been allocated. Somebody paid the money. Why is that person not being charged or brought to book or question?
Which person paid that money?
The money was paid for the construction of a laboratory for the CID. It's one of the Anglo Leasing.
I think the commitment fee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Must have been paid, perhaps. That's what
I'm asking whoever paid, why not being hold?
All those names, all those people who made those payments are contained in the report, and the report submitted to the CID and the EACC for investigation.
Don't you then find justification in Kenyans refusing to pay? I mean, us and MP saying we can't pay if the people who are liable are walking around the streets. Can't they be charged and money recovered from them? Because clearly there are violations of law, abuse of office. I mean, we have seen recently a charge against the governor of the central bank for refusing to follow a recommendation. He has been charged in court. These are people who performed, and the record is there. He hasn't been charged. And they're working, and we need to pay for those sins of crimes. Don't you think there's a moral question there that MPs are standing on?
I see your point, and I'm trying to see how far we can address this point without...
I think you have to be careful with opinions in responding to that question.
You have to be very careful in answering that question, because I think that's part of the ground that is in court. And I have very strong opinions on that, but I don't think I should express it.
Let's rephrase the question.
Maybe let's then move on if you allow.
No, let's rephrase the question, because several of our viewers are asking why you seem unable to name names. You've given us Pereira, but not any others. And so there's a feeling that in as much as you claim to be arguing for the government in the interests of Kenyan taxpayers, that you're still protecting people who are walking the streets of Kenya free. So can you give us a list of the people associated and implicated in the Anglo Leasing scandal?
Of course I can.
Okay, go ahead. Tell us.
I don't have it offhand, but
okay.
I can supply.
What can you remember?
The international ones or the
locals?
If I can quote from both, there's a report that was done by PwC, which is a report, one of the reports we submitted in evidence in the case, and in that report it named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals.
Who are?
Kenyans. Now I'm trying to see. I know I can argue this in court. But can I? I'm not sure if I can.
Why not?
It's one of the things we submit in court. You see, because
it's public documents.
Yes.
Yeah.
And public information, I suppose.
It's not your opinion. It's a fact.
Yeah, I think it'd be good if I gave you the report and. Okay, the names are there. They're in the report. 2 of them are. One is a former finance minister. One is a former Minister of Communication and Information. The 2 PSAs and the Postmaster General, those 5 were contained in that report, and those 5 were the ones who were supposed to be charged.
Okay.
And
those are in government. How about the private? The business?
I don't have the names offered. Some of the names are quite complicated, and
okay, you're a lawyer.
But I can supply that.
Provide those. Okay, so we will ask you to supply that for us later. You're a lawyer. Why was the case not filed in Kenya, where the cause of action arose? That came from Kigan in Eldoret.
Yes, very good question. That's part of the reason why we're saying these were unfair contracts. The applicable law of the contracts was English law. It was not Kenyan law.
Why is that?
That is the contract that was entered.
Okay, so we go back then.
Part of the reason we were saying they were unfair contracts.
But then we go back to the Attorney General's office, part of whose responsibility is to draft contracts.
How did
this pass? And why then have the people who were in the Attorney General's office then not been compelled to answer for their commissions or omissions in the course of their duties?
Let's go back to the PSC report. The PSC report castigates the Attorney General at that time for exactly that, for failure to to provide the adequate legal advice with regard to those contracts, and to enter contracts which were unfair, grossly unfair to the to Kenya.
So do you think that...
In fact, it goes to the extent of saying that he was more interested in the rights of the international company than he was of the government of Kenya. And this is contained in that report. And the only reason I'm saying it is because it's contained in the PSC report. Since then, and I think this is important, we have changed the way the Attorney General Office operates. Now, all contracts, it's a requirement that must come at the point of negotiation, at the point of entering into, must be vetted, and the Attorney General's chambers must play an important role in those contracts.
Okay.
And it's something that we are dealing to now. And the reason why we do that now is singularly because of this Anglo Leasing contracts.
Okay, a name comes up from one of our viewers. Deepak Kamani has always come up on these contracts. Is he also out of Kenya? Doesn't he run known businesses?
I'm not aware of the whereabouts of Deepak Kamani. These cases we have, his name does not feature at all in the two cases we're dealing with at all.
Okay.
I know his name featured in the original Anglo Leasing, Anglo Leasing one, but in this one it does not feature at all.
Why? Okay, the government realized it had been committed to unfair agreements or contracts, or did it emerge? At what point, let me say, in your tracking of the trail, did the government realize these were unfair contracts? And why didn't the government take the initiative to go to court to stop, to seek nullification of those contracts, rather than wait to be the recipient of court action by the companies that were due to be paid?
A very good question. And this is what I was trying to explain when you talked about those countries that have taken action against corruption, against unfair contracts. After Malcolm Maore presented on the floor of the House evidence of the Anglo Leasing scandal, and we eventually went and interviewed John Githongo, the government actually stopped all payments for any of those 18 contracts. And they had actually issued some bonds to some of those companies. They cancelled those bonds on the ground that they were entered too corruptly.
Yes.
Exactly akin to what you're saying in these Botswana and other countries. Now, we did that. We actually took a step and said, a very bold step, and said, none of these things will be paid. Okay? But later, as they were reviewed, and the PSC report says it, we should review these contracts to get fair value, to see whether they can get fair value, where there were goods and services supplied. And that's why the two were paid, right? And that's why the two judgments have been entered.
Okay.
But the point is not answered. The question is not answered.
David, we have to. We have 10 minutes to the end of the show, and we haven't taken our second break. We're taking a break now. You're watching Cheche live on Citizen TV with our guest, the Solicitor General of Kenya, Nje Muturi.